Hailing from a hilly town of Uttarakhand to IIT to Forbes 30 under 30 to starting your own AI startup to working at Visa as an engineer, certain co-founders who can sort of complement their skills or they want to find someone as a partner.
You get exposed to a talent pool which is outside of your domain, right? By quitting your job, you know, okay, the startup is the only option that you have and you just continue and hustle through it.
Launching consumer product dependent on intuition, surveys, and delayed feedbacks.
The enterprises are investing millions of dollars in your AI products to launch something in the market. It's not a silver bullet, is what I would say. So what that means is that AI is not the only thing which is telling you the answer.
When it comes to your perspective in the enterprise or B2B level, it can be very dangerous. What are the key red flags an AI entrepreneur should not have in his pitch deck when he's approaching a particular VC or a investor?
So with no offense to the VC industry, even today it is a lot more driven by the FOMO. What is the mode that is being created with the data? Obviously is being used a lot, but I don't think inherently wrappers are bad. There is not an exponential shift in terms of dramatically changing that problem, then maybe AI is not the right use case to build something, right? And it's always good to have that delusional belief in the vision that you are trying to create,
because sometimes it seems impractical too.
A lot of the founders run out of energy.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ignition. This is Varun Pandey, your host, and it's all about you, AI, and our future. Here we talk about how AI is going to build the way we build products with the ones who are actually building it. And today we have someone very special. He's from my hometown. He's a Forbes 30 under 30, and he's built and sold AI startups, which is disrupting the FMCG industry. So welcome Himanshu. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much, Varun. Really excited to talk to someone who is from the same hometown.
Thank you. Pleasure. And please tell us how you're feeling and how it's been all along.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great building in the AI space, especially when it's evolving so fast. And I mean, if you think about it, a couple of years ago, like, you know, the GPT and all the LLMs model did not even exist. And today, if you look at the pace at which the AI is really evolving and how each and every industry is getting impacted, not just a select few industries, I think it's one of the best times to be building as well as working in the AI space. So super excited. At the same time, of course, while we did sell the AI palette to Global Data, which is one of the big organizations in the data space, but at the same time, I'm really excited about the future possibilities, not just for FMCG, but for all the other industries as well.
I just like to go a bit back, right? And ask about your journey, right?
Yeah.
Hailing from a hilly town of Uttarakhand to IIT to Forbes 30 under 30 to starting your own AI startup after working at Visa as an engineer and being interested by Fortune 500 companies. That's a big name. That's a big credential to your AI startup. So what sort of motivated you and pushed you to move out and choose an unconventional path to build in AI as a core space?
Yeah. So, you know, if I look back at my life journey and that's something which you can always look at it backward, right? And not forward when you're really taking those actions. There is one line which can summarize the path journey, which has been the road less traveled. It's a poem by Robert Frost, which we used to study in school and whatnot. And I think that's what my life has always been. If I talk about the background part of it, I hail from a family where every other generation before us has gone into army, right? So me and my brother, we were one of the first engineers from our army-based family. So that was a road less traveled at that point of time. And after that also, when I went for the engineering into the IIT Guwahati and did my bachelor's in mathematics and computing, that branch itself was relatively new. While there were obviously the choices available of mechanical, civil and whatnot, and CS of course, I ended up choosing mathematics and computing, which was very young branch. Again, a road less traveled. And the similar thing happened when I opted for Visa as a placement session. And that point of time, Visa opened their India office in 2015, and I was one of the early engineers there. Again, this was sort of a road less traveled because there were obviously much more matured companies like Microsoft, Google and the others. But I ended up going and selecting.
And what motivated you to choose Visa only as a role?
Yes. So one thing which I really liked about the role and not just the company was the exposure to big data. Now, if you look at Visa, they essentially have billions of data points, right? And these billions of data points are related to each and every transaction that you make, right from the time you tap your card till the time it gets processed. There are tons of digital footprint that you are leaving, and Visa essentially has network of that acquirer to to card holder and whatnot, and they collect all of that data and use it to monetize, right? Related to the merchant related discounts and whatnot, while it is related to the cardholder related discounts. So they essentially are encompassing this entire huge data lake of finance, which you can, and this data, by the way, is not just in gigabyte, right? This is petabyte scale data. So you can imagine how much the extent of this data is.
I also noticed you were not in very conventional projects at Visa. You were in some sort of, some new market kind of, new product kind of thing.
Yes. So I think one thing which happened interestingly during my time at Visa is I got exposure to a lot of new age projects, so to speak. So what I mean by new age is, at that point of time, AI wasn't what it is today, right? Today, of course, everyone knows about AI. Back then, it was just another field, right? People did not know much about it. So it wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today. So at that point of time, Visa heavily started investing into building the infrastructure for the AI models. So they invested a lot of their time and monetary value into building the data infrastructure and the data lake, right? Because that really helped them to then start building models on top of it. So that was the time when most of their table migration and everything happened from the legacy based system to more of AI first systems. And that definitely paved the way for the next set of growth, which happened when, once the base was set up and they started building the models. So a couple of models which I worked, interestingly, one was related to prediction model, where we would predict related to the Black Friday sales. Another interesting one was related to fraud detection, where we would try to detect whether a particular transaction is fraud or not, right? So again, a lot of these interesting challenges I got exposure to while working at Visa.
And they were the bed of motivation for you to maybe have something of your own tomorrow in the industry. And at the same time, I would also like, it's a feat. You're just 7 years young. I won't say old. As a startup, and you have such big names to your clientele, right? So were these both the motivation as a bedrock of motivation for you while you were building there at Visa?
Yeah. So I would say one primary key insight which actually pushed me to start a company, an AI company rather, in FMCG domain was that when I was in Bangalore, and this was circa 2015 to 2018, because that's when I was working at Visa Data Labs. At that point of time, any AI conference which I used to visit in Bangalore, and you name it, right? Any AI conference which used to be there, and if you would go and look at which are the startups which are there, most of them used to be from fintech domain, right? So if you would go to any conference in the Bangalore, the majority of the startups used to be from fintech domain. And there were very less startups from the other domains.
Or e-commerce, 2015 to 18.
Yeah, 2015 to 18. So primarily they were the AI startups were primarily focused on BFSI sector, which is the banking finance domain. But other domains, if you look at, right, whether it is construction, whether it is even marketing and all of that, they were not there yet. So that was also one of the reasons which actually got me curious that AI is there in today in finance, but it is only a matter of time that it will go into the other domains as well, because I could see the value of it. And also because I was at Visa, I could see how AI is being used to harness the power of the big data, because Visa was obviously having this huge amount of data, and how the AI is being used to get the insights out of it. Similar principles can be applied to the other domains as well. And that is what got me excited about the AI as a field. And of course, in 2018, I quit my comfortable job and I said, let's travel to this road. Let's travel once more.
Was it a side project initially, or like you went full on into it?
Yeah, so it was more of a full on where I quit my job, and then I said that, okay, let's take a bet on myself.
And I'm sure you might have found a co-founder there only, or was in your circle or college?
Yeah, so I actually ended up joining a program which was Entrepreneur First. So Entrepreneur First, it's a deep tech accelerator program which brings together people from different domains. And this particular program, the cohort which I joined was based out of Singapore. So I ended up moving to Singapore for that program, which is where I met my co-founder Som, who actually came from the FMCG domain. And once we got to discuss more and understand each other better, what we realized is that there are a lot of commonalities in the FMCG domain and the fintech domain as a whole. Firstly, there is huge amount of underlying data in both of the domains. And similar to in the fintech domain, where you would try to predict, as an example, right? Like which of the trends are going to grow up and all of that. The similar analogy would be also applied to, let's say, FMCG, where you could try to predict which is the next big food trend or which is the next big beauty trend. So these were some of the parallels which got me really excited and interested about the domain as a whole. And the sooner and later we started discussing with the prospective customers, like what are the different pain points. And ultimately that got us kick-started into the AI pilot journey.
So Himanshu, you mentioned that you found your co-founder at the cohort.
Yeah.
So a lot of AI builders and AI entrepreneurs, AI enthusiasts are watching us. They are looking for certain co-founders who can sort of complement their skills, or they want to find someone as a partner who want to build with them, right?
Yeah.
So would you advise such cohorts are the go-to places for this? And apart from this, what let's say go-to places you advise to such people for finding right people to build the team?
So again, there are two schools of thought. One is that you try to find someone from your own circle that you trust, because at the end of the day, when you're starting a company, you really need a good amount of trust on the other co-founder, right? And that trust is going to play a big role through the highs and the lows of your startup journey. So typically what I have seen is a lot of folks, they start company with their college friend or with their colleague from work and all of that, right? So that's one school of thought, and I've seen a lot of successful examples also happening out of that journey, because at the end of the day, it's the trust which really plays a big role. But at the same time, not everyone is lucky enough to have such friends or colleagues who are equally motivated to start a company, because starting a company is also a risky venture in that capacity. So what typically also happens is some of the people, they end up joining these accelerator programs. Now, Entrepreneur First is one, but there are also tons of others which are out there. Now, by joining the accelerator program, one good thing which happens is you get exposed to a talent pool which is outside of your domain. For example, if me and my friend are starting, high chances are both of us are engineers and we are starting with the mindset of an engineer. But when you go to this cohort, you find someone from a complementary skill set or someone from a different domain. For example, in case of me and my co-founder came from the FMCG domain, which is the food and beauty industry. I came from a technical background with AI and machine learning. So by marrying the both of these skill set, it becomes a killer combination, because then I understand the best part about the tech and he understands about the business, and both of us are able to come together and build something which is momentous in that perspective. Yes, while they do interview the people and try to understand what's the inherent motivation, because a lot of the people, they also just apply for the cohort just for the sake of it, but they are not really ready to plunge into the entrepreneurship. So one of the key criteria is obviously looking for someone who has already quit their job. That's one. And secondly, they also try to look for the people who have done something incredible in their own domain or in their own area of specialization. Because at the end of the day, if you're just another engineer out of the thousands of engineers, then there is no differentiation, right? So they want to understand, even if you were an engineer, let's say in an e-commerce company or in a fintech company, what is that one different thing which you did compared to all of your peers, which really makes you eligible for this particular cohort. Agree on that. And again, I have my own thoughts about it. Some people say that, okay, you should continue as a part-time, and until it hits a certain milestone, you should continue. I am of the other opinion.
Do you feel that it's kind of a cheating from your own motivations कि आप दोनों जगह दे रहे हो?
So that's where I feel I have a different opinion. I feel very strongly that you have to burn the boat, right? Once you reach the the land, right? Boat, so this is more about you are essentially removing your backup option, right? It becomes your only option now, right? By quitting your job, okay, the startup is the only option that you have, and you just continue and hustle through it. Obviously, one thing you should do when you do quit your job is set a timeline for yourself, right? Because what typically happens is a lot of people quit their job and they start, but then they don't set the milestones, they don't set certain deadlines and timelines for them, right? You should put a certain timeline of whether it is a year or 2 years at max, where you should feel that, okay, I will put everything into this particular idea, into this particular venture. I will give all of my 110%. But if something doesn't come out of it, then I will go back to the job industry and start my own career journey and all of that, right? So I think that is very, very important, because sometimes what happens, people get sucked into this entire entrepreneurship, hustle. So what happens is they quit their job, they continue at it, and they feel that, okay, sometime or the other this will work. But it becomes very, very difficult if there is no growth, no momentum, and you're just continuing at it. Either you do something differently, but if you feel that, okay, there is not enough good idea, or maybe the idea does not have a market that you are trying to build for, then better to go back to the job industry and rethink your approach and maybe take a shot another day.
I think it's also about picking the good, right projects in your job too, which sort of prepare you for that
Exactly.
hustle.
True, I agree on that, and I think that's what I also did, right? If you look at my journey, I learned a lot from my visa experience, right? In terms of handling the big data, in terms of dealing with the chaotic, unstructured data, dealing with building the foundation of the machine learning systems, understanding how do you harness the insights out of this raw unstructured data. So all of that I learned during my visa experience, which I was then able to apply in my AI pilot journey. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for me if I was starting right as a college fresher.
True. So your startup is into building from ideating to launching consumer products for names like Coca-Cola and big FMCGs, right? So my question to you is, most of the time prior to AI, launching consumer product dependent on intuition, surveys, and delayed feedbacks, right?
Yeah.
So how AI is going to disrupt this space, and how you plan to do it in the
Yeah.
next 5 to 10 years as an AI industry leader?
Yeah. So I'll tell you very interesting evolution that has happened in the market research and overall the consumer industry as a whole, right? Now, if you talk about decades ago, and specifically if you talk about a generation which was our father's generation and the grandfather's generation and all of that, now that generation used to be very risk averse when it came to the consumer products. And also they used to, for example, they would use only one brand of soap throughout their lives, or one brand of shaving kit throughout their life, or let's say.
But they were also used to do this because of they were not used to LPG thing, right? There were not much foreign brands in India.
Yeah, exactly. So that was also one of the reasons. But even if you look at it from a global perspective, like obviously India did have that challenge where there were certain restrictions into the globalization and all of that. But even if you look at a country like say USA as an example, the experimentation used to be a lot less. Now with the millennials and the Gen Z, the experimentation level has gone up significantly. What I mean by the experimentation is, for example, I myself have tried 3 coffee brands in the last 2 months. Right?
Okay.
And I keep on trying out new and novel, coffee brand or tea brand or whatever the kind of new consumer products that are coming out. Similar thing is happening in the protein. If you look at the protein powder as a segment, in the past there used to be only Optimum Nutrition as one of the primary brands. Today, if you look at the domain, there are so many brands that have come out with the protein powder, and the protein consumption as a whole is growing so much, and everyone is becoming health conscious and whatnot. So overall, if you look at it, what is really happening is consumers are becoming more and more cognizant, firstly, about the choices, and they are also demanding more choices, right? They are not just restricting themselves to only one brand. They are jumping from one brand to the other, and they are open to experimentation. Now, and also why this is happening, if you look at the underlying principle or the reason why this is happening, because all of us are firstly getting very globally connected, and the trends, the consumer preferences and trends are also starting to move very, very fast globally. Right? Today, for example, if there is a trend that starts from the Korea as a market, that trend will sooner or later come to India also. In the past, that used to be very uncommon.
I guess Korean cosmetics already have a premium
Exactly.
demand for themselves in India, right?
True, of course, right? And if you look at it, the Korean cosmetic itself has become such a big industry that now even in US, whether it is US to Southeast Asia and whatnot, everywhere it's there, right? And they have established like a brand identity for its own. And in food and beauty industry specifically, I will digress a bit, but I will explain you what really happens in the food and beauty industry, right? So one of the key factors of influence in this industry is cross geography and cross category. Now, what I mean by cross geography and cross category, for example, a lot of the trends in the food and the beauty industry, they start from Japan and Korea, right? Okay. And then they percolate and travel down to the markets like Thailand, markets like Indonesia, and from there they then travel down to countries like Singapore and Malaysia and all of that. So there is a clear line of insights and the trends which are moving from one geography to another. Right. Similarly, if you look at the cross category, a lot of trends, for example, which happen in the alcoholic beverage, they are happening because of the trends which are changing in the beverage as a category. Similarly, a lot of trends in the confectionery, for example, the candy and all which you eat, they are derived from bakery as a category.
Okay.
Right? So because of this cross category and cross geography influence, it is also becoming more and more pertinent that the brands which are looking to innovate, they have to keep an eye not only on the local market but on a global market
In real time.
and in real time, right? So that's where the platform like obviously the AI pilot journey comes into the picture, because that's exactly what we are trying to help the Fortune 500 companies with.
So right now, is it only Fortune 500 for you? Because I feel a lot of, especially when I look at programs like Shark Tank, every other startup is a D2C startup there, right? Almost 8
Yeah.
out of 10. So what I mean by that is are you also eyeing on SMEs and startup as a category for your clientele? I mean, like it's a huge market.
Yeah.
And what's the scope there?
Yeah. So obviously the TAM there is also quite big, but of course if you compare it with the enterprises, so for example,
Account size would be small.
exactly. So the size of the account will be very, very small. That is one. And one challenge that we have really seen with the D2C brand is that they don't have a huge amount of SKUs. For example, they might have only one product, one coffee brand with a very limited SKU. So the utility for them is lot less because they don't have too many SKUs to experiment with, right? As compared to that, if you compare that with a company like say Unilever or Coca-Cola, they have so many brands, and within each brand they have different SKUs, right? So it becomes more and more important for them, and also because they are very global in nature, right? These companies like Coca-Cola and Unilever and Pepsi, they are present in almost every other geography in the world, right? For example,
इतना सारा complex markets, cultures, and data. How is AI able to keep that in check
yeah.
in real time and devise and launch consumer products? Like if you can tell
Yeah.
very simply for our audience
Yeah.
in a short manner.
Yeah, so the way to firstly think about it is, so while obviously AI is there, it's not a silver bullet, is what I would say. So what that means is that AI is not the only thing which is telling you the answer. It's also a lot about what is the kind of data that you are collecting, how you are cleaning that data, how you are processing that data, and how you are engineering that data to finally give it to the AI model to make sense out of it, right? So I would say the heavy lifting actually happens in the 80% of that data processing layer. And finally, the AI comes into the picture with a clean data to provide the
You
detailed
don't take
insights.
care of the ingesting of the data. That's what you mean very briefly, right? They give you the data, the clientele, and you make sense out of that data.
No, so it's a combination of both. So we look at, so we also get the data, but then we also get the customer data. So it's a combination of the data which comes from 5 different buckets, if I were to specifically go into it. One is a social, because social media is again one of the trends driven platforms which is out there, and you can understand what are the food and beauty related trends which are happening on social media in advance, right? So that gives you a lot of signals. So that's one. Second, we look at the search data, because search is also a good proxy in terms of understanding what consumers are searching for.
Search where? Which platform?
So this would be Google as a platform, right? For example, if you are looking for say a coffee brand, or if you're looking for a skincare trend, you would go and type it on Google. So that's how we are able to understand what you are really looking for, right? So that's another platform. Then thirdly, we look at food service and menus. What is happening in the fine dining space, what is happening in the restaurant space, because that's where a lot of trends also originate in the food industry. Then the fourth, we look at what are the e-commerce products which are out there. We look at everything and anything from the Fortune 500 brands to the smallest of the D2C brand to understand what are the kind of products that are getting launched in the market. And finally, we also look at the fifth is the blogs and the forums where people are talking about the food products and the beauty trends. So it's a combination of these 5 that we are bringing in. But in addition to that, we also get the data from the customer. So from the customer side, we look at what are the research reports that they have, what are the kind of products that they would have launched in the market, what is the brand personality of that particular brand. So all of this getting combined is what we are pushing into the AI model. And of course, when I say pushing, I mean after cleaning and processing and structuring it into a good amount of structured data so that AI can actually make sense out of it, right? And finally, that provides the insights to the customers in real time. And this data, by the way, keeps on getting refreshed, as you can imagine, because if I was not refreshing this data, I would see outdated information. So I keep on refreshing this data to understand what are the new trends which are coming in the market.
So I'll connect it to a very important question in the AI era is about hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
Hallucination for the audience perspective, hallucination. So most of the AI models are biased with the information they're already fed on, right? And hallucination means the AI model giving you wrong or let's say biased information or output whenever you ask something from them. So coming back to you, hallucination can be annoying in the B2C perspective, but when it comes to your perspective in the enterprise or B2B level, it can be very dangerous, right? So how do you as an AI startup leader sort of build AI system which actually keep a check on hallucination for your
Yeah.
systems?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, right? And hallucination, if you look at it, it's not just a technical bug, it's actually a trust bug.
Okay.
Right. And because at the end of the day, the enterprises are investing millions of dollars in your product, in your AI products to launch something in the market, right? So there is a lot of decisions that are being made on a scale of 6 figures, 7 figures, which are then getting launched in the market. So it becomes very, very important to take care and give them the insights which are not hallucinating or which are not giving them a wrong picture.
True.
Now, if I talk about the personal journey of AI Palette, again, we have gone through the evolution of the AI models and the insights and the output, and we have also seen a fair share of learnings from this entire process. Now, one of the things that we have realized is very, very important in any AI model and any AI system is the explainability. Now, what I mean by the explainability is, for example, if I'm recommending let's say a new flavor, say a matcha flavor for a Coca-Cola brand,
True.
then I should be able to explain it. I should be able to give the evidence behind it. Because typically what happens, AI models are a lot more black box in nature. So it becomes very difficult to tell why a model is recommending matcha.
True.
Why not say strawberry? Why not blueberry, right? So that's why it becomes very, very important that you provide the explainability part. Now, what we have done at AI Palette is we have a combination of SLM to LLM to classical machine learning model to even the statistical based model.
Okay.
And based on all of that, what we provide to the customer is we provide the reasoning that why matcha is getting recommended. For example, we would look at the growth rate of the matcha. The growth rate has been growing consistently. We would look at how many products are coming out in the menus, how many retail products are coming out, how much the growth has been. So it's not just looking at only the AI model, we're also looking at the statistical, the data backed information, which is providing the final trust to the customer. Rather than just providing matcha as a recommended trend, we provide all the supplementary underlying backed information, which makes them trust the data a lot more, right? So that's one.
Which means you are sort of looking out for a lot of unconventional sources as well to keep a check on the data, right?
Yes,
Right?
yes,
Because
yes,
I feel even if you take Google as a platform, it might be biased to an extent, right?
yes.
To the searches that are being made. But what if, a lot of people who are searching for a consumer product is not on Google, right? So
Yeah.
it means you are catering, or let's say you are verifying from certain sources which
Yeah.
are not very conventional.
Yeah. So I would actually correct that and say that we look at the data in a very unconventional way, even though
Okay.
we might be looking at the same platform. I'll give you one example, right? So what typically happens is there's a lot of bias, like you mentioned, right, in each and every platform. Even for example, if you go to Instagram, there's a lot of bias because data would be majorly coming in from the metros, as an example.
Yeah.
It would be coming in from urban population and all of that, right? So how do you try to manage all of that? So we essentially look at the data from multiple lenses and try to manage that bias. For example, one of the biases we manage is by looking at the data not only from tier 1 cities but also from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So we would try to understand the hashtags which are happening in, say, cities like Jaipur, cities like Ahmedabad, which are tier 2 cities, right? So not just influencing the data with trends coming in from Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai and Kolkata, but also from these tier 2 cities, right? So that's one way in which we manage it. The another way in which we manage it is we would look at a brand lens. So for example, what I mean by that is I would not just look at what the Fortune 500 brands are launching in the market. I would also look at what is happening with the D2C brands. What are they launching in the market? What the local players are doing, what the regional players are doing, right? So understanding all of that becomes very, very important because food is also very local in taste and nature, right? Snack brand in South India could be very, very different and very big compared to say a brand in the north, right? So that's another way to manage it. And then thirdly, we look at category related trends also, right? Category related hashtag also. For example, when we are looking at beverage, we don't just look at the beverage, we go multiple levels into the domain. So we try to understand what is happening in, say, juice, what is happening in tea, what is happening in coffee. And within coffee also, we would look very differently at cappuccino, latte, mocha, and all of that. So
Do you feel it is one of the best time to be a creator or influencer or a celebrity in the sense they can influence and impact the consumer trends a lot more than ever than it was before. Because when we see a lot of celebrities on social media, or let's say influencers launching their own product,
Yeah.
and they going out of stock within a few minutes, within a few
Yeah.
hours of them being launched.
Yeah.
Recent one was there's a creator called Elvish Yadav. He launched a particular clothing brand, and within 12 minutes, I guess 1 lakh units were sold. So what I mean by that is you are at the back of it. You know the data, how much
Yeah.
they're influencing.
Yeah.
Is it a fluff or a real stuff?
Yeah. So I would tell you why the influencer brands are actually working, right?
Yeah.
Why the influencer brands are working is because of one word, which is trust.
Okay.
Now, what typically happens is when you're trying to buy a brand in the market, or when you're trying to position your brand, the customers are really looking for the trust. Now, if you look at the past, right, Tata, for example, has a huge amount of trust. So any product by Tata, you would buy blindly. Like Tata salt, is ubiquitous with salt.
Yeah.
Similarly, when these influencers, when you trust them enough and they launch their products, you already know that, okay, this product is going to be good. This product is going to have a lot of quality and whatnot. So that's why a lot of the influencer related brands are seeing this surge in the demand and whatnot. But at the same time, I think one is the part of the demand, but at the same time, the product also has to be equally good. So it is good for attracting and for getting that growth, but ultimately the retention is going to be the key, right? How and also the quality of the product itself. It might result in one-time purchase, but if you need to have a repeat purchase, then you cannot compromise on quality. So influencer brands, definitely we are seeing where the quality is also good. Those brands are definitely seeing a lot of traction, but the ones which are only having the marketing angle to get the first set of users, but then they are not able to sustain because of the low quality or the poor quality, those brands are still going to suffer.
So, Himanshu, I'm pretty sure as an AI startup leader, you might be not just doing the conventional thing at your place for serving the clients, but also experimenting at a at a fast pace, right? So, when you are having an idea and launching it to a real world adoption while you're experimenting all in between, what's the biggest challenge? Is it the technology, or is it the expectation, or is it the market?
Got it. So I would say, firstly, if you look at it from all these three factors, right, the technology, the expectation, and the market. Market is something that you choose in the very beginning only, right? When you're trying to build an idea and trying to launch a product into the market. Now, there are some industries or some markets which are more open to experimentation. For example, finance has always been one of those early adopter industries compared to the other industries, traditional industries like, say, construction and oil and gas and whatnot.
But finance may be B2B or B2C?
Again, B2C, of course, is more early adopters than compared to B2B in general. I mean, businesses are slow to react to, but consumers, at the end of the day, they are very ready to, try out new things and all of that. Again, it depends on the age groups and the demographics and all of that. But considering, since my focus has been primarily on the B2B, I will try to keep it more focused on the B2B side of it. Now, one is, once you have selected a market, now there are some markets that move fast and there are certain markets that will move slow. By nature of it, when you're building an idea, you will choose one of the markets, right? So that's something which remains there by your virtue of being in that market. But at the same time, the other way to look at market could be the geography. Right? So one is industry in which you are in. The second could be the geography. Now again, there are certain geographies which move very, very fast. I mean, US is a classic example, which moves much, much faster compared to the Asian
Is it
geographies.
because it's a mature market compared to emerging
It's a
market?
mature market for the enterprises and for the B2B, and also one of the reasons why you see a lot of founders today directly shifting to the Bay Area, to the Silicon Valley to start their own startups, right? Previously, it used to be the case that they would start building in India and then go to US, but now a lot of the founders are directly going to the US as well, especially in the AI B2B SaaS space, because they also realize that the customer adoption there is much, much faster. Even if I talk about the AI pilot journey, we started from Asia as a market, and then slowly over a period of time, we moved to US and Europe. In the initial part of it, our revenue from US was less than 10%. Today, it's close to 40%. Right, so you can imagine how much growth US has seen in the last few years
I guess
only
you
for
are the
us.
best person to tell three stark differences between an emerging and a mature market when it comes to experimentation
Okay.
with regards to people's behavior, user behavior.
So I would say the first difference is the inherent culture in terms of experimentation, right? Now, some markets by virtue are full of experimentation. I mean, they are used to experimentation and they are willing to try out new things. Now, US is one of those markets which is open to that. Even though they might have an existing legacy product or a product which might be working, but they are still open to trying out a newer product which can give them more efficiency.
True.
Compare that to, let's say, the Asian markets where people are more complacent in nature and they are okay with what is working rather than trying to experiment too much, right? So that's one of the differences. The second difference which I have seen is typically in terms of the size itself, right? The size of the opportunity itself. Now, what typically happens when you go to a market like US is the size, the contract value that you will be able to get from a customer will be much, much higher compared to the India and even the other geographies for that matter. And typically, people bargain a lot more, right? In Asian markets. For example, even though you might be trying to get a pilot, right? They will push you to do a free pilot, right? They will not agree to.
Cultural difference.
There's a big amount of cultural difference which happens in US. Even though you are doing a very small POC or a pilot, they would be willing to pay you money because they realize the value of
Asia is
time.
a low trust market and compared to West or let's say mature markets.
That is one, but I think it's definitely that's if you look at the underlying reason, the trust is obviously one of those factors. But at the same time, I think it's also about the relationships in the India. The way the business works is a lot more driven on relationships than the value of the product. In US and the other geographies, what we have really seen is the focus is more on the product and the value that you are able to bring in than the relationship itself, and that's why a lot of the new age startup folks are able to disrupt an existing player in the US. But in India, it might be a lot more difficult to do it because of the relationships that I've already built out.
True. Very, very interesting points to note out, Himanshu. And now I'll be coming to something very important, to a journey of a AI entrepreneur. And a lot of my friends are also building in this AI area, and I'm sure बहुत सारे जो हमें देखते हैं they are also building in this area because building has never been easier, right? At least for the MVP stage.
Yeah.
So my question would be, how is the VC team or let's say VC sector reacting to everything that is being built? What I mean by that is, in the market, a lot of wrappers are moving around, AI wrappers.
Yeah.
So it's very hard, at least for the consumers, to know what is a wrapper and what is an actually LLM based AI model, right? And now I'll shift it to the VC perspective. How do you feel that they are able to judge it when someone approaches them for investing? And secondly, what are the key red flags? What are the key red flags an AI entrepreneur should not have in his pitch deck when he's approaching a particular VC or a investor?
Got it. Well, firstly, with no offense to the VC industry, I think
Definitely,
it
we'd
is
love to
still
hear some hot takes here.
yeah. So, with no offense to the VC industry, even today it is a lot more driven by the FOMO rather than the actual understanding the value of
You are
it.
talking about the Indian system or in general?
In general, whether it is in US or whether it is in elsewhere in the world, the funding, the underlying funding is always being driven by a lot more FOMO rather than the actual value into which investors are trying to get into.
Okay.
Now, why that also happens is again there are different waves and cycles of the industry which happens, right? I mean, in the past it was AI was starting to become hot in 2021 and whatnot. At that point of time, B2B SaaS was also one of the very hot things. Now then the generative AI wave came into it. Today you have the agentic AI and whatnot. Now then the future there is going to be the super intelligent AI and all of that, right? So definitely these waves keep on coming up, and investors are and trust me, almost if I were to talk about the universe of the investors, a very few of them come from technical background. So they won't really understand the technology part of it. So they won't be really able to differentiate between what is a wrapper and what is not a wrapper.
I've heard this a
firstly.
lot because a lot of them come from investment banking backgrounds.
Yes.
And they have not, no offense, they have not been deep in the trenches.
Yes.
While building a particular product. So they don't understand the nuances and maybe they judge it from only one lens. That is, maybe I have to build my money and take an exit. Am I
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. A lot of the folks in the VC industry actually come from the finance domain. They're not inherently coming from an engineering background or a founder background for that matter. While there is obviously a momentum shift happening, there are a lot more VCs which are starting to come up from the founder who have been ex-founders or who have worked in the startups, but still a vast majority of the VCs are still from non-engineering background, and it becomes very difficult for them to grasp what this this idea could potentially be. So a lot of the times they would just look at the financial metrics and they would try to evaluate what is the potential of that idea, which becomes very wrong for a very early stage startup. Let's say if somebody is trying to build the next Google as an example, right? It would be very difficult for them to even imagine how that Google would look like if you just look at the underlying metrics of it, right?
Even OpenAI has not been able to crack the business model yet, right? But it has been one of the most influential products of our century at least.
Yeah, of course. And even in case of OpenAI, while of course Sam Altman comes with that mindset, and he obviously is a great builder, and he has been able to, and he has been able to, of course, attract the right amount of capital needed in order to scale his entire business. But at the same time, if you look at all the other startups that have started to come up, it's been very difficult to differentiate what is noise versus what is not noise, right? And I think today what is happening is, if anyone is building, let's say, a cursor for this, or if anybody is building a lovable for X, I think all of them,
even cursor and lovable are rappers.
Exactly. I mean, they're also rappers in that way. But again, it's become very difficult to differentiate, and everyone is just primarily being driven by fear of missing out, and they are trying to get a piece of the pie, so to speak.
So how do you feel investors are actually judging what is rapper and what is not from your lens?
Yeah. So I think while obviously without generalizing a lot, there are some good VCs who are able to cut through the noise and try to understand it better. From some of the VC friends that I have and that I've spoken to, one area that they are really focusing on is the retention, right? Now, what I mean by the retention is it's very easy today for people to sign up for a new AI tool because everyone wants to experiment around.
Yeah.
But
in B2C perspective.
In B2C perspective, and even in B2B, right? For example, it's very easy for an enterprise to start experimenting because a lot of these AI tools will have a free tier. So you will sign up for the free tier and start experimenting.
The trust barrier is higher in B2B, right?
B2B, of course, yeah. I mean, compared to the B2C, it would be on the lowest. Definitely they would demand more rigorous checks and also more guardrails and whatnot. Yeah. But in B2C, of course, it's very easier to sign up. So that point, you are absolutely right. But I think the point that I was trying to make is, in general, for the AI tool, signing up is a lot more easier compared to the retention. So I think the VCs are also looking for how many of the people or those users are coming back, right? Let's say after a month, or after 2 months, after 6 months, and how their retention is really working out for these different AI tools. So that's one of the key metrics, which will also help them to understand what is the value that is coming out of this, right? So that's one. So another area which the VCs are looking into is the data moat. What is the moat that is being created with the data? Now, while wrappers obviously is being used a lot, but I don't think inherently wrappers are bad. Right, because I mean every company in the world runs on a some sort of foundational layer and whatnot. So ultimately, it's more about the value that you are able to bring in and what is the proprietary moat that you are able to create. Now, a lot of these wrapper tools are able to create their own moat of data because users are engaging with them, so they are creating these feedback loops. They are creating their own data, proprietary data that they are generating through the feedback loops that they have in the system, which is helping them to create a moat. And it also becomes difficult for you to switch because a lot of these models become better with more and more usage because they understand the patterns of how you're functioning and how you're operating, right? Take cursor as an example. I mean, the cursor now, the way that you are using it, it understands you better with the different use, with each and every use, right? And over a period of time, it builds this feedback loop, which allows you to prevent the common pitfalls. As opposed to that, if you go and start experimenting with a new tool altogether, it will have that learning curve, and also it will take you some time to get used to it. Right? So the wrappers definitely have their own value, but at the same time, they should have all of these mechanisms in place to ensure that the value is becoming better over a period of time.
VCs understand that.
And VCs, again, a set of VCs, because as I have mentioned, the VC as a whole, they are being driven by FOMO. But there are some set of VCs, coming in from the ex-founders or from the startup domain who understand that this is a area to look into, and moat is again very, very important in order for building a sustainable business and not just something which will see a sudden spike in growth, but then eventually die down, right?
And what do you feel are the key red flags an AI startup entrepreneur should not have while pitching themselves to a VC?
Yeah, so I speak to tons of startups, and one of the key red flag for me will be trying to use an excessive amount of buzzwords. Right now, what I mean by that is a lot of the folks today, they are trying to position everything as agentic, right? I mean, they are saying even though they might not have a underlying infrastructure which is supporting that agentic, but they would, just because they want to ride the wave of agentic AI and raise the funding and raise the money, they would start using agentic or autonomous and self-reasoning and human in the loop and whatnot, right? All of these buzzwords. But I think very important is you should understand what is the value of it. Does it really fit into your business model, into your infrastructure and architecture? And is it actually going to create any value or not? Because if not, then your bluff will be called off. Because while not all VCs will be able to catch it, some of them who are good at it, they will be able to ask you counter questions and really understand if you are having that surface level knowledge, or do you really understand what's going inside your business model, inside your infrastructure, which will help you in doing that and in achieving that, right? So that's obviously one red flag if you are overusing the buzzwords without actually implementing those, right? I think some of the other red flags, which I obviously covered before, was more around the retention. They've started looking at retention much more. And I think one of the other red flags that they also try to understand is with the founder not just focusing only on the solution and the modeling part, but actually on the problem, on how the problem is getting solved. And VCs also look for how did the problem exist before the AI space? How was it being solved? Let's say when AI was not there, was it even a problem then?
Is it that impactful?
Yeah. So one of the other things which the VCs look for when it comes to evaluating the startup is how did this problem used to exist before AI was there, right? Whether it was even a problem back then, and even in that problem, was it a painkiller versus a vitamin? Which means was it a good to have versus a must have, right?
So you saying must have startups will have more probability to get funded rather than want based
Yes,
kind of problem, right?
yes, that's correct. And also, what is the value that AI is bringing in now? For example, if something was being solved without AI for such a long time, is AI able to disrupt it completely? Is it a 10x better efficient solution? Can it compress the time in which that particular problem is being solved? Then there is definitely value. But if there is not an exponential shift in terms of dramatically changing that problem, then maybe AI is not the right use case for that problem. And there are tons of problems which might not need AI, right? You can't force fit AI into each and everything.
I think a lot of effort should go back on preparing and studying the market before solving from the problem, right?
Yes.
Like the market should be big and enticing enough
Yeah.
to build for it and get invested.
Agree. But I also feel that, market is, again, something that you can start with a niche market, a small market, and slowly you can expand into the adjacent verticals and adjacent market, right? So while obviously VCs focus a lot more on having a large TAM, but at the same time, you should have a vision to go into the different verticals and whatnot. But it's always good to start from one small niche and small vertical, and then start focusing on building and upscaling from there. So I think that's again one of the ways in which you should try to look at a VC fund and pitching and whatnot. That while you should paint the vision to be a global AI company, but you should also show how your distribution is going to really look like. How it will start from, let's say, one persona, one geography, one category, and then how slowly over a period of time you will expand into the multiple markets, multiple verticals and whatnot.
Himanshu, I was also going to connect this question to is AI also gone? I was going to reframe this question to also knowing is AI going to make alive some of the dying industries like tech? Because some of the entrepreneurs watching us are also building in such industries which have a scope to get revived post AI like edtech. So do you feel there's a scope there, or is it a sinking ship? Broadly, very broadly, if you can tell us from your experience.
No, I think that's a interesting point, right? And obviously, again, you have to see where the AI will fit in and where it will not. I still feel that edtech has a lot of potential to use AI. And for example, one of the ways in which you should think about what is the application of AI in the edutech could be personalization, right?
Okay.
Now, each and every one of us, from our school to engineering days and whatnot, is wired very, very differently. And each of us have different IQs, different level of understanding and grasping a particular subject, a particular topic. Now, AI can make the personalization of the learning very, very easy and customized for each and every one of us, because everyone will learn at a very different rate. Everyone will learn from a very different analogy. A way to think about this would be, for example, if I'm a student who is interested in sports, and you are a person who is interested in, say, fashion. Now, if there is a topic which has to be explained, and if the analogy can be made in reference of sports to me and fashion to you, you would understand the topic more fast and more better, right? So I think it's more about understanding and personalizing that message for your learning, and where I feel there's definitely immense amount of opportunities which are out there.
So we can say that industries are still not saturated. When we talk about, let's say, e-commerce also, it's a saturated space now. But with AI, maybe a new domain of products can open up, right? Which can cater to something else.
Yes, of course. And I think even in, if you look at e-commerce as an example, right, personalization is still not there yet to the large extent.
Is it?
I mean, a very simple example would be, for example, if you open up your own Zepto or your own Blinkit, and I open up my own, while there will be some sort of recommendations which would differ, but it's not personalized on
Can you
a
give an
like-to-like. So, for example, let's say understanding my persona, my digital footprint, based on multiple factors, right? It could be demographic, it could be based on my own preferences, what all I have ordered in the past,
My interactions with the app.
right? And of course, my own interactions with the platform, what am I searching for, and everything. So, all of that can be then shaped from a UX point of view, from a color and persona point of view, right? So, which is more of a UX and UI part of it, personalization, which can seem very, very different. So, the same app could look very, very different to me compared to you. I mean, taking the earlier example of the sports and the fashion analogy, for you who is interested in fashion, the colors could be very vibrant, right? Compared to me who could, for example, have lot more focus on sports related, paraphernalia and whatnot. So I think it's that layer is still not cracked. I mean, it's there. Of course, there are recommendation algorithms and engines which are powering that, but it's not on a one-on-one level. They are still looking at a cohort. For example, the way that today recommendation algorithms work is they look at a cohort of users and then recommend them certain
I'll connect
products.
this question to an interesting one. Super app has always been a dream of many entrepreneurs, but they almost everyone has burnt their fingers in it.
Yeah.
But what OpenAI is trying to build is recently they got a feature called shopping experience, right? Where you can get recommendations and links too. So they have some bigger plans. So do you feel that this whole separate app market, which is customized for every need, is going to dilute down to one super app, which is OpenAI? And for example, I don't have to go to 10 apps for shopping my football boots, right? I just type and maybe I get the 10 links then and there, and then I make the choice and I take an exit. Like, do you feel that is the future, or is it sort of an exaggeration?
Again, one of the key points, if you have to look at it, is how the user engagement and user experience is changing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, couple of years ago, trying to have a conversation with a chatbot was not even imaginable, right? Today, all of I mean, it was not even foreseen, and today all of us are using either ChatGPT or Claude on a daily basis, right? And I think the way in which we are engaging with these assistants, so to speak, is going to become more and more prevalent, right? Now, not just in personal life, but also in the professional life, right? I mean, all of us are using some sort of AI tool with a conversational layer being built into it, and all of us are using it on a very engaging basis. Recently, I was reading about how OpenAI is going to introduce the advertisements also for the free tier users, right? And it will be an advertisement that is hidden. when you're typing and like, let's
Like
say
in
for
forms of recommendations?
in form of like a recommendation where let's say if you are typing for let's say travel
I
and
guess they did a while back, right? In terms of some search results, they did.
yes,
I'm
yes.
not sure
So
about
I
the
think
product.
they've started rolling it out for the free tier users,
Acha,
and slowly, I mean, the idea is that they would expand it onto like other avenues as well.
Okay.
But the underlying point which I was trying to make is that a user experience itself has changed quite a lot, right? Which is in terms of conversation, which are happening with a digital assistant or with a digital chatbot, and being able to embed and being able to reduce the friction of going to a different website is only going to become more and more prevalent, because at the end of the day we humans crave for not a lot of friction, right? We want the things to be more seamless and more smooth, and by having that, and more quick as well, right? And by having that digital experience being performed in one particular platform itself is going to become much more easier for me rather than trying to juggle between so many different platform. So to answer your question, while it might not look like a super app, but there will definitely be some sort of consolidation that will start to happen, right? Where you would because I mean, even today, right, you wouldn't want to go to 10 different apps to do 10
Exactly.
different
Like,
use
why would
cases.
I go to Expedia, bookings.com and 10 other websites when I
Yeah.
want to book a holiday if I can
Yeah.
get the best package right on one prompt?
Exactly.
Right.
And also the way to think about this is that, it's not just about only looking at a travel, right? Because ultimately when you're planning for a travel, you're looking for flights, you're looking for
True.
hotels,
End to end.
you are looking for end-to-end journey, right? Also looking at the recommendations and whatnot. So having all of that into one single will actually be more easier rather than going to a very specialized platform for travel, very specialized for some booking and all of that. But at the same time, it is also a challenge. While we are obviously talking about the usability perspective, there is also a challenge because when you try to bring everything into one, then the accuracy, the hallucinations, and all also start to emerge a lot more, right? Because you're trying to bring together all these disparate data sources and you're trying to essentially get the insights out of it, but it becomes a lot more difficult to do. So it will also be a test of challenge for the company which is aiming to do this, whether it is OpenAI or whether it is Google and whatnot. I still feel Google, definitely has a lot more matured infrastructure where they already own the distribution and their models are also becoming much more and more good compared to
I think they
the
made a
others.
pretty good comeback. I
Of
guess
course, yeah.
within 3 years, I mean, like from nothing to having such an infrastructure. And I'm amazed because I've tried their tools.
Yeah.
And I'd say Microsoft, despite having a flawless distribution, they couldn't do that, couldn't replicate that.
Yeah. So it's
And
also
yeah,
a good case study on why
yeah,
user experience matters a lot,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
And I
exactly.
think while distribution was always there with the Microsoft, they were not able to capitalize
Not
on
just
it.
software, but hardware too.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, hardware to a certain degree, but then of course the software is where they were really
But
owning
the
it, right?
embedded Copilot in every Windows laptop, na, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
That's a
okay,
huge
yes,
mode.
yes. And even after that, not being able to crack the market
Yeah,
is really
it's a big
disappointing.
failure. True.
Yeah.
So I guess this is time. This AI era is one of the few eras where I feel we have the tools, and then we have to think ki, what's the possibility to build. Compared to what earlier was, we had to think and we have to find out tools, right? For example, Notebook LM can give you a detailed, let's say insights about a lot of things. Gemini, OpenAI. So, what would be your three piece of advices to upcoming AI builders and AI entrepreneurs for the mistakes to avoid for a faster growth? And you can connect it with your journey, or let's say in general, as an AI investor, as a AI leader.
Got it. So I would firstly, because coming from an engineering background, the first advice that I would give is don't fall in love with the with the solution, fall in love with the problem, right? Because typically what happens with the engineering mindset that you come, right, you focus a lot more on the technology aspects of it. You want to build the best AI model, and to be honest, even I used to have that, right, when we were building AI palette, that we will build the best AI model for the FMCG industry, but quickly when you speak to customers, you realize it doesn't matter for them.
मैंने तो ये भी बनाया है, but it's not relevant for the consumer, right?
Exactly, right? So I think it's more about what is the value that you are able to bring in. They don't even care, by the way, if AI is there or not. As long as you are able to solve the problem for them, whether it is in an Excel or even if it's manual, right? If you're able to solve the problem for them, they will value it. Of course, AI is able to turbocharge their entire process and change the way in which now the market research is being driven, and that's why a platform like AI Palette is able to really survive and thrive in this competitive market, right? So that's definitely one of the key advices that I give to each and every founder that I meet. Second, which I give is speed is your moat, right? Now, why I say speed is your moat is because today, like, LLMs and foundational models are changing so fast and so rapidly, and also the underlying infrastructure bit of it is changing quite a lot, right? So how do you ensure that you are on top of it and being able to use that into your product as soon as you can, right? For example, when Nano Banana came, how can you use those image capabilities into, for example, a consumer app that you might have, or let's say an enterprise app that you might have where image generation is a use case, right? So being able to incorporate these elements, or even in case of GPT, right, when the image gen 1 model came and the other models came, how do you use them quickly and provide that value first to your customers becomes very, very important. And I think that's where the speed is always going to be very, very critical. Of course, that being said, the speed should not be should not be directionless, of course, and it should not be that you're just doing it for the sake of it. It should bring in some value.
Candy feature.
Yeah, exactly. So it should not be just an eye candy feature. It should definitely bring in some value and impact. So that has to be there. But the sooner and faster you are able to give that capability to your users and customers, then it becomes more better and easier for them to essentially use it in their workflow.
I think which you swear by heart ki this is first principle rule for me while building and avoid to mistake to avoid.
So okay, so one principle that I really live by is, and this is for the startup founders in general. I mean, nothing related to technology, but more about the founder resilience part of it, which is that the startup journey is more like a marathon than a sprint, right? And typically, what happens when the first time founders, one thing which I have observed is they become enamored with the idea of starting up. And once they get into it, there's all high and there is all energy and everything is good. But then until they hit a rock, right? And then suddenly the things start going southhill, and they become more disinterested and disengaged and all of that, right? But I think they have to really understand that a startup will have its own highs and lows, and you have to really go through this journey and sort of sustain through it.
You also advocate being delusional a bit in the sense when you cannot see clear, anything clearly in hindsight, showing up every day, being a bit delusional, to your problem.
Oh yeah, of course.
You advocate that.
So I would say that if you have to be a startup founder, you have to be a delusional one, because at the end of the day, you are really going against the odds to build something, right? And it's always good to have that delusional belief in the vision that you are trying to create,
because sometimes it seems impractical too.
True, but I think, see, if you look at all the best founders and the legacy that they have built, right? Whether it is Amazon, whether it is Google, and all of that, right? I think all of them were delusional enough to imagine a world where such products would exist, right? I mean, we sitting in 90s would not have even imagined a technology like Amazon and Google at that point of time, right? But they were able to really dream big and do it. Of course, there is a success bias which happens because we are only looking at the successful stories. We are not looking at the failure stories also that happen. But one key quality is all of them were delusional, right? So I think you have to be delusional. But I would say when you are being delusional, you are also not just looking at the delusion part of it. You're also looking at, you're setting the goals and you're setting the deadlines and timelines, right? So it's delusion, but with some structure into it, right? Where you are putting yourself, and you're also looking at the market signals, right? It's not like you're doing everything delusionally. You are not even looking at the customer feedback. You're not even looking at the market. You are looking at all of that also and seeing what is the market, how is the market receptive of, what is the feedback it is giving it to you. And then you are using that to improve yourself, right? I would say one area where the successful founders and the failed founders really differ is the delusional ones. They understand what is the market signal and then they incorporate those changes, right? But the other category, the delusional ones, which the failed ones, they won't even consider the feedback which is coming in from the market. They would just discard it and they would live in their own dream world. I think those are the ones they are definitely not able to get through.
I think Sam Altman also pointed out it's always most of the cases the failure is the founder and not the things around him in most cases, in the sense, because if you cannot see a solution to your startup problem right now, you can pivot, you can always pivot, right, based
Exactly.
on the
Yeah. Yeah.
feedback, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, just extending onto that thought, right? It's also about the founder energy itself. A lot of the founders run out of energy, right?
Okay.
Because of, and again, it takes me back to the same point, the marathon and not the sprint. Because if you are just thinking of startup like a sprint, where you will just run 100 meters and it will be all over, it doesn't work like that. You have to really give it time, because everything will take some time for you to see those highs and the lows and sustain through the lows so that you are actually able to see the highs, right? And it's not easy. I mean, to be very honest, there was a time when one of our best employees resigned, but I still had to turn up with a face that was full of confidence, right? There were times when we were running out of money, right? And there was a very less runway of the startup that we had. So there were multiple challenges. There was a time when one of our largest customers churned, as an example, right? So there have been challenges, and these challenges will be part and parcel of your startup life. But I think it's more for you to start handling that chaos and also ensure that the impact does not get percolated to your team. Your team should still look at you in confidence. They should, you should continue to exude that confidence from your own to the team.
But to answer in brief before we close, does the ID tag actually help, or is it a hype? To mention a few words.
Yeah. So I would say maybe 5 years back, it definitely used to help. I think today it has become lot less. In terms of the value. I think now the value is coming more in terms of what is the traction that you are able to build, and also the problem that you're solving in the market. I think those take precedence over just the IIT tags, because today, the capacity to build has obviously become a lot more faster and accessible and easier, right? In the past, obviously, it used to be very, very difficult to build, and you needed access to capital and resources and funding and all of that. Today, you don't need tons of funding to build something, right? You can build a prototype, you can build first version, and you can also get some sort of distribution by reaching out to the market. And there are fantastic founders from non-IITs who are doing great, right? I mean, and I think it's only a matter of time that we will get to see more and more of such startups that are coming out. Sam Altman talks about this one-person unicorn concept, right? Which is that there will be solo founders who will achieve the status of billion-dollar valuations, and I think we will see that in due course of time, where there are solo founders that are being able to, and you never know, right? Maybe someone sitting in Uttarakhand might be building a one-person unicorn tomorrow. So there is definitely the possibility of that happening, and I think we are getting the infrastructure and ecosystem being built out in such manner.
Very great to hear and very optimistic. Well, that wraps up all of my questions, sir. And thanks for answering all of them so gracefully and in a very compact manner. I really look forward to having much more sessions with you whenever your schedule allows. I hope you felt the same.
Thank you. Yes, I felt the same, and I think again, talking about the same Uttarakhand example, right? I think both of us come from that place, and obviously we have seen a fair share of challenges and all that. But I think at the same time, both of us also recognize that things are changing so fast now, right? Today, I mean, I recently traveled to Pithoragarh, and I saw that there's 5G network available there, right? So now you're not restricted anymore. Like a person sitting there can actually build a global app, a global AI product, which can then be used by everyone from the world, right? So I think sky is the only limit, which is there.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you for the opportunity.